With a great deal of pleasure that I introduce Dr. Elias Siraj, doctor of medicine, fellow of the American College of Physicians, and he was selected to by EVMS to lead its diabetes program in 2016. He brings an international perspective and a special interest in improving outcomes for patients who have both cardiovascular disease and diabetes. Dr. Siraj received his medical degree with great distinction and a gold medal from Gondar College of Medical Sciences in Ethiopia before earning his Doctor of Medicine, magna cum laude, from the University of Leipzig in Germany. He completed his internal medicine residency at the University of Leipzig and at the Cleveland Clinic, and then did an endocrinology fellowship at the Cleveland Clinic. He is fluent in several languages. He came to EVMS from Temple University in Philadelphia, where he directed the school's diabetes program and headed the endocrinology fellowship training program. A native of Ethiopia, he was previously I'm going to say it again, endocrinology faculty at the Cleveland Clinic. In his capacity as professor of internal medicine and chief of endocrinology and metabolic disorders at EVMS, he oversees the EVMS Strelitz Diabetes Center. He also leads the research programs at the EVMS Center Cardiovascular Diabetes Centers, which helps coordinate long-term care of patients with diabetes and heart problems. Please welcome Dr. Siraj.
Thank you for the nice and kind introduction. So, I'm going to make it interactive, I think. You don't have to wait until the end if you have questions. So we'll see. Sometimes I have given a lot of lectures like this. What I found out is that different people have different background knowledge about diabetes. So therefore, it always helps to start from the basics so that everybody is on the same page. So, so diabetes is all over. Do you guys recognize some of the pictures here? Some of you who watch TV probably. This lady called Paula Dean. She used to eat butter in her shows, and she was hiding her diabetes. So diabetes is all around us, and it's affecting the celebrities and the TV stars and all of them. So if things continue the way they are now, in the US, in 2050, 1 in 3 US adults will have diabetes. 1 in 3. Hopefully, we are going to do something to slow it down. But if we don't, that's the future waiting for our kids, to happen. So if you look at those figures, the top figure shows you obesity, what's happening in the US in different years. The darker the color, the redder the color is, the more diabetes, the more obesity is happening. So as you can see, in 2010, almost all states are in the red category, which is more than 26% of people have obesity. And then that closely tracks with diabetes. If you look at the lower part, about a third or 25% have greater than 9% of people have diabetes. And this has been increasing over the years. So each decade, things change. And they have always been changing in the bad direction.
Type 1, type 2.
This is both. This is both. And as you know, 90% of the diabetes we have in the US is type 2. And I will show you a couple of slides about that. So what is diabetes? So when we talk about diabetes, we are talking about the blood sugar levels being high. Okay? The reasons could be either we don't have enough insulin, like type 1, or our body is not using the insulin properly, like type 2. And, okay, here we go. So this is kind of a complicated graph. It tries to make very simple fact. So if you look at the circles, consider this to be a cell in our body, okay? The cell needs glucose or sugar in it so that it can function. But the sugar has to enter into the cell. The key to entering is the insulin. If the key doesn't fit, then the sugar cannot go in. So the insulin opens the door to the cell so that sugar can actually enter, and the cell can make use of the sugar. So how do we make diagnosis of diabetes? So we do blood tests, okay? Mostly we do fasting blood tests. Normal people will have between 70 and 99. Diabetes people will have more than 126. Pre-diabetes or borderline will have between 100 and 125. And there's another test called A1C, which we do. If you have it 6.5 or higher, then it's diabetes. There's another test where this is actually casual. If you go after you eat, not fasting, then if it is above 200, then it's diabetes, okay? So what are the symptoms? Remember, the majority of people with diabetes, it gets picked up without symptoms. So they go for a physical, and then the doctor tells them, well, you've got a touch of diabetes. So keep that in mind. Most people actually, we diagnose it before it even becomes symptom. But when people get symptoms, it means it's really, really high. And they could be urinating a lot of urine, thirsty, hungry, they get dehydrated, they lose weight, they have blurred vision, and so on and so forth, okay? So what's the difference between type 1 and type 2? Type 1 typically happens in kids or young adults. And they have no insulin at all. The insulin production in the pancreas is damaged. And that happens because of what we call autoimmune. Your body develops antibodies which damage the pancreas, which makes insulin. So this happens in about 5 to 10% of people in the US. 5 to 10% of people with diabetes, okay? On the other side, type 2 primarily happens in adults, but it's also happening in kids. It's actually sad. If you go to the 1960s and 70s, and you go to a pediatric doctor and ask him, if you look at all your patients with diabetes, are they type 1 or type 2? He will tell you, are you kidding me? All of them are type 1. There is no type 2. Now, half of the patients they see with diabetes in kids are type 2 because they are obese already by the time they are 10, 12, 11. So keep that in mind. So a lot of times, it's associated with obesity, with our lifestyle, with our eating. And with that, our body develops what we call insulin resistance. The insulin cannot act properly anymore. It's there, but it's not acting right. Okay? So what are the factors? Who gets diabetes? Well, there are certain things we can help modify, and there are certain things we cannot. For example, we can't pick our parents, correct? You can't. It's done. So the genetics part of it, you can't mess around with it. Whatever you have, whatever you got. Okay? So a lot of times the genetics, our ethnicity, and this and that doesn't change. Keep in mind that people of African American descent and also Asians and Native Americans, they have much higher diabetes than whites, for example. Okay? On the other side, there are things we can modify. Our weight is a very important factor. Part of it is our lifestyle, what we eat, and then we are not active. You know? Mankind, for 99% of its existence in this world, was toiling outside and working hard, correct? And it's over the last century or two that people increasingly start slowing down, and more over the last 50 years, you know, we have become more and more sedentary. Even for one block, we have to take our car, correct? And part of it is not our fault. Part of it is how we design our cities. I mean, if in front of your house there is a big highway, you have to, how are you going to go the other side? So you have to drive, correct? So it's just how we design our, so part of it is our fault, our individual fault, but part of it is how we are growing as a civilization. So lack of exercise, our diet, our, you know, I may have a couple of slides here. I will show you about that, okay? So weight is a major risk factor, lack of exercise, our diet, and so on. This is actually, some people have, you see it more in African Americans, but it also happens in whites. Some darkening of the skin on the back. That sometimes is an early sign of diabetes. It's a sign of insulin resistance, you know. Just to keep that in mind. So, and then we got to, actually before we even go to managing diabetes, let's talk a little bit about the diet, because that's kind of a big one. What is the problem with our diet? For starters, we eat too much, you know, just the amount. It doesn't matter what you eat. If you eat too much, then you are getting too much calorie. And that's going to make us gain weight. And then if we gain weight, the insulin becomes inactive. And that leads to diabetes. And then within our diet, we are eating too much sweets, sugars and sweets. And then we eat too much fat. Fat is very dense in calories. Just so from 1 gram of fat, you get double the amount of calories you get from 1 gram of sugar. So in terms of weight, actually, the fats are bigger culprit than the sugar. And then we have processed our foods. You know, whole grain, the natural whole grain is better than the processed white flour, because we are taking away a lot of the fibers from it, and so on. So diet is a major, you know, problem. So when we come to managing diabetes, so the first thing we tell people is that obviously they have to adjust their diet, and then they have to do some regular exercise, and then they may need medications. They may need pills, or they may need insulin. It depends on the situation. So this is kind of a simplified picture of what a good food should be. Half of the plate should be filled with vegetables. Half. A quarter has to be the starch, and less than a quarter has to be the meat and whatever. I'm making it simple, but and then there has to be fruits and maybe 1 serving of milk every day. That's dairy products. This is a different way of looking at it. Vegetables, starch, proteins. And a lot of times, people with diabetes, once they get diagnosed, we send them to a nutritionist or a dietitian, which makes actually a specific plan for that particular person, okay? They will tell them, for your body weight, you need this amount of calories a day if you want to lose weight. And then from that, this amount can be carbs, this amount can be meat, and so on and so forth. So this is just kind of a list of the things. But adjusting your diet is one of the key things we tell people with diabetes. Also, we teach people, actually this is important for everybody, develop the habit of looking at the nutritional labels. Each time you buy any food or you are about to cook something, look at it, just for your own education. Over time, you are going to develop some knowledge of this food has actually too much sugar. This one has too much fat. And the labels, they tell you how much calorie it has. Calorie is the totality of it. And how much of it is fat, how much of it is carbohydrate, and how much of it is protein. Okay? And so on. So that's very important for people with diabetes. We tell them to make that a habit, but that's also important for people without diabetes. Yeah?
When you had the calorie from fat, I've never understood that on the labels. What does that mean?
Okay. So basically what it does, let me just tell you how to understand this. So this is from graham crackers, from a box, okay? At first, it's telling you serving per container. It means the box has 32 servings. Okay? What is one serving? I want to know what one serving is, correct? One serving is 4 graham crackers in this product. Now, everything you see in this box is about one serving. So one serving, which is 4 graham crackers, give you a total of 80 calories. Of that, 18 of it is coming from the fat. The reason they put that is people have been watching their fats. People want to know, quick, how much calorie am I getting from fat? So that's what it tells you. If you want to be very specific, it tells you there's 2 grams of fat in that one serving. There is 14 grams of carbohydrates. Of that, 4 grams is sugar. You see that? And then there is 2 grams of protein. So this doesn't tell you what is bad or good. All what it tells you is what is there in it. So you have to know, in particular, if you have diabetes, you have to develop a plan with your nutritionist, how much of carb you want to eat in a day and how much of this and that. But the information is there. You just have to look at it. Yeah. So the other thing is, when we treat people with diabetes, I don't know if some of you may have diabetes, how far do we bring their sugars down? Okay, I gave you some numbers, what normal is and what. So we do give them a target, something to aim for. This is what we should try. So before meals, we try to get their blood sugars to between 70 and 130. 1 to 2 hours after meal, we try to get it to less than 180. A1C, this is the 3 months average. Some of you might be aware of the A1C. The A1C measurement is it gives you a 3 months average of blood sugar. The A1C, we target it to get it to less than 7. Okay? So these are the things we teach our people to keep in mind. That's our goal. You may not get it day in, day out, but in average, we want you to be around there. Okay? So that's, sometimes it takes time to get the goal. So there are different types of activities people can do for diabetes, both to prevent diabetes and also to treat diabetes. There's the things we call aerobic activity. So these are things you can do: walking, dancing, skating, swimming, water exercise, and all those things. And these are actually the most important when it comes to having an impact on diabetes and the like. Okay? And, you know, in terms of walking, that's the most common thing. You know, we tell people, if you are walking kind of brisk, a little fast-paced type of walking, you could do 30 minutes. If you are doing kind of a slow walking, it has to be 45 minutes. And you have to do it 4 to 5 times a week. You know? So basically, you have to incorporate it into your life, into your day-to-day life. Yeah?
You said, you know, that type of activity. Would you say that weightlifting, would that help?
No, that I will come to that. That's a different type of exercise. It helps, but it's different. So these are the most recommended, what we call the aerobic exercise. The things we call, here we go. These are the weightlifting falls into this resistance activity. So it helps you strengthen muscles. So if you do weightlifting, you know, your muscles here and there are going to be strengthened, but it doesn't affect as many muscles, correct? When you walk, when you swim, when you jog, more of your muscles are actually involved. But any type of exercise is better than not doing exercise. Okay? So for some people, it's fine. They can do you know, weightlifting, but we tell them, in addition, you have to do some walking and some jogging and stuff like that. Okay? So, and there's stretching people can do. That also helps. It makes flexible. It avoids risk of injury. And then people have to start slow. In particular, if people who haven't done exercise, sometimes actually they have to talk to their doctors. Yeah.
I'd like to just pass on to everybody here, this walking business. Dot and I go to the Chesapeake Square Mall 5 to 6 times a week. The doors open about 8:20. You'd be surprised how many people, I gotta be careful with this, how many people our age are in there walking.
Yeah.
It's 1 mile, just short of 1 mile around the interior.
Yeah.
Air conditioned, comfort, they sell coffee, they sell coffee. We have a good time.
Yeah.
But you'd be surprised, there's probably, what, 50 to 100 people there? A lot of people are doing it.
Yeah, that's good.
And it's free.
Yeah, it's good information. I mean, thank you for telling. So follow his suggestion, okay? I think there's, you know, when weather is bad, go to the mall, air conditioned, you know? If weather is good, you can do it in your neighborhood or in the park, you know, next to you. It's about incorporating it into your day-to-day life. I mean, if you have a dog to walk, you have it right there. Just make sure you are walking, you know, adequately. And it also helps if you walk with a partner, your spouse, your neighbor, your friend. So this is the start. You know, you aim for 30 minutes, but you know, you can make it more if it's slow. It also depends on your other medical conditions. That's why you have to talk to your doctor, just to make sure. You have to make sure there's no active heart disease, and sometimes they have to do stress test. Once your doctor tells you, you know what, I don't see any problem, you can exercise, then you know you could do that, okay? So, and then the other thing, we at the end, once if lifestyle is not enough and you have diabetes, then you're gonna need medications, okay? So there's a lot of medications that we have these days, and in particular over the last 20 years, the number of medications we have has gone up. There is insulin on one side, everybody knows. It's the dreaded insulin, we call it. The injection. It's not as, for me, it's not dreaded, but people, I don't want to be on that insulin. I'm not ready yet. So some people have struggled when it's time to start insulin. But insulin is one, and then there is the other, the pills, on the other side. So, we have a lot of pills. These are some of them. These are actually so the different types of medications work differently. So the first ones are, there's a category of medication, we call them, sulfonylureas. This is the technical name. They stimulate the pancreas to produce more insulin. So that's how they work. The pancreas is the gland which makes insulin. So they stimulate it, or they encourage it to produce more insulin. And we have a list of medications which do that. Okay? The second category is biguanides, which the most important one is metformin. A lot of people with diabetes have been on metformin. They know that. In the old days, it used to be called glucophage. Now, so metformin, what it does is it blocks, or it reduces the release of sugar from your liver. What do I mean by that? So people ask me. So let me just give you an example. I don't know if some of you have diabetes, but this is a common thing. Some people tell me, Doc, I went to bed with a blood sugar of 120. And I woke up with a blood sugar of 200. And believe me, I did not go to the kitchen at night, okay? So I tell them, you don't have to convince me. I believe you. So the reason is our liver, under normal circumstance, makes sugar, which is actually good, because we are not eating every minute, are we? Sometimes we don't eat for 12 hours for a good reason, correct? Maybe we are having a long sleep. But our body has to survive for the 12 hours. So what does it do? The liver makes planned amount of sugar ongoing. So that's normal. But in diabetes, it forgets what's normal and it just releases sugar, a lot of sugar, the liver. So that's why a lot of people, when they wake up, they have high sugar. So the metformin actually is one of the medications which can lower that. So that's kind of one of the main mechanisms. There's another group of medication called, for example, Actos is one of them. They make our body more sensitive to insulin. Okay? So the muscles and everything else become sensitive. So whatever insulin we have works better. Okay? And then we have newer medications. Let me see. Here we go. Called the gliptins. These are actually, the way our body is created sometimes is just amazing. I mean, like 10, 20 years ago, people found out the following. A simple example. If I were to give you the same amount of sugar through your mouth, you eat it, or I give you IV, properly formatted. I'm not saying take the kitchen sugar and put it IV. The same amount of sugar, but prepared for IV. And then whenever we eat, we know that the insulin level in our circulation goes up because our body notices, I'm going to need insulin. A lot of sugar is coming. So it makes insulin. So what happened is when we get the sugar through our mouths, leads to more insulin secretion than when we get the IV. So initially people thought IV you think is faster, correct? Because it just goes into circulation. So the reason is our body actually, the moment food starts eating, while we even start chewing, our gut secretes certain hormones which go to the pancreas and tell it, get ready. The insulin, sugar is going, the load is coming. So it starts making insulin faster. So it ends up, so based on that, they created a new medication. These are new medications which do the same thing. So they help the pancreas to produce more insulin. And they do that. There is also a similar category of medications. We call them GLP-1s or incretins. But they are given as injections. They are not pills. They are injections, but they are not insulin. There's a distinction here. In the old days, every injection for diabetes person, everybody thinks is insulin, correct? Now there is insulin and there is non-insulin injections. So they are given as injection once a week or once a day. They also make our body produce more insulin. And they also help people lose weight. So they have the added benefit. They kind of curb our appetite so that we end up eating less. Okay? And then there's actually a newer product which just came about a couple of years ago. These are also very interesting facts. Again, I come back to the human body, to the very interesting human body. So in healthy, normal people, all the sugar in our circulation, it passes through our kidney. And then it's actually already in what we call a pre-urine, before it becomes the final urine, before it becomes the final pee. And then, but at the end of the day, the kidney decides to reabsorb it. So it dumps it, and then it reabsorbs it before it ends up going into the urine. So what these medications do is they tell the kidney, you know what? Don't reabsorb the sugar. Let it go. Let the sugar go into the pee. Because most people already are over. They have too much sugar in their circulation, or they have too much energy in their circulation. So they end up peeing extra sugar. So that's how I'm making it simple, but that's how these new medications work. In addition, though, newer studies are showing that some of the newer medications, in addition to lowering sugar, they improve what we call cardiovascular outcomes, meaning the risk of heart attack gets less, the risk of stroke gets less, the risk of dying from those types of cardiovascular disease gets less. In particular, the three medications are shown to do that, in particular if they are given to people who already had heart problems. So somebody who have had a heart attack in the past, but he's doing well now, with those medications, their chance of getting another heart attack gets significantly less. So these are very helpful developments. Yeah. So, Jardiance is one, a pill. Victoza is another one, an injection. Invokana is another one, a pill. Okay. So, those medications are not for everyone, but the doctor, decides, who will be the best, for each medication. But this is a new thing that we were able to show. In addition to lowering blood sugar, they also improve heart outcomes. Remember, the biggest killer in people with diabetes is heart attacks. The majority of people with diabetes will die of heart attacks. Still, we have gotten better. Things are better now than they were 20, 30 years ago because of the statins, the cholesterol pills we call statins, because of a lot of blood pressure pills. So the risk of dying has gotten less, but it's still high compared to people without diabetes. So people with diabetes have a higher risk of dying of heart attacks. Then we have the insulins, the injections. The old insulins always came with vials, and then you take a syringe, a needle, you draw them, and you give yourself. So that's the old-fashioned way. The newer ones come in pens. Okay? So they literally look like a pen. They're discreet. You can hide them. And people say, "What a nice pen you have here," you know? What a fancy pen. It's insulin, but they don't have to know that, correct? So they look like a pen. And they have insulin inside them. You dial them whatever amount the doctor told you. It could be 10 units, it could be 15. And you give yourself, it's very small needle. And then it's easy for a lot of people to click, because when they do with the syringe, they have to push it all the way. It's like a long process. This one is just a single click. So people are daring to do a single click. They do that and it takes care of it, okay? But it's good. Sometimes the insurance companies give us a hard time.
I have a question. The pens made me think of it. My brother is a real bad diabetic.
Yeah.
And he doesn't use a pen. He uses the old kind.
Yeah.
But he doesn't refrigerate that insulin. Is that a major problem?
Yeah. The way, what we tell people is the following, okay? When you store them on an ongoing basis, they have to be in a fridge. The only exception is if you are working outside for the whole day, and you can take them with you. For a short term, they could be out. But you shouldn't keep them out for days and weeks nonstop. Then they could easily become non-functioning.
He does this all the time. I can't.
So what we tell people is the ones you are not using, keep them in fridge until it's time to use them. The ones you are using, if you are at home, use them, put them back. Use them, put them back. If you are going out for normal activity and you are gonna need them outside, take them with you. That's okay. For things like that. So there are 3 types of insulin. We have the very fast insulins, we call them. And they are like the jets you see right there. They are very fast. And then we have what we call regular insulin. It's like the racing car. It's fast, but not as fast as the jets. Then you have what we call the regular average car. It means it's an intermediate. It's neither too fast or too slow. And then we have the very slow insulins called Levemir and Lantus. So depending on the situation, the doctor usually decides. Some people need a background long-acting insulin, and they may need 2 or 3 shots of the fast-acting insulins for the meals. Some people need twice a day NPH, okay? Some people need a combination of long-acting and short-acting. But that's kind of the different categories. There's also insulins which are what we call pre-mixed. So there is an insulin called 70-30, where 70% is intermediate acting and 30% is fast acting. So there are different. And then you may also have heard about a thing called insulin pump. So the insulin is delivered from the pump through a tiny tube and a tiny cannule which is inserted under the skin, and it gets changed every 3 days. The thing under the skin gets changed every 3 days. The pump is programmed by the doctor to deliver a background insulin continuously, whether you are eating or not. And then when you eat, you tell the pump, right now I'm about to eat 60 grams of carb. And the pump calculates, it's programmed. It will tell you need 4 extra units for the food. It also, when the blood sugar is very high, the pump will also give you tell the pump, my blood sugar is 300, and the pump would calculate and will tell you need extra 5 units to bring it down. So these are things which can be done with the pump. The other thing is, actually, you know what, there was one slide I forgot. So there is a thing we call continuous glucose monitor. For some people, checking your blood sugars a couple of times on the finger stick doesn't give you the full picture, correct? Because what happens in between? So let's say you check your blood sugar when you wake up and when you go to bed. What about the remaining 22 hours of the day. We don't know. So there is a thing which can be inserted under the skin, and it gives you 24 hours of blood sugar ongoing. And then it also, some of them are attached to the insulin pump, and it has bells and whistles. It has alarms. If something is going in the wrong direction, it will give you an alarm in advance. It's not going to wait until your blood sugar is too low. It identifies when the thing is in the process of dropping. It figures it out and say, you know what, got to do something. If within half an hour, you may end up being too low. So a lot of those things, we use them. And just to give you an example here, this was actually a patient who was checking twice a day. So when he checked that twice a day, in the morning, before lunch, it was about 85, which is good, not bad. And then when he was checking it 7 p.m., it was 110. So he would have gone to bed thinking everything was good in that day, correct? Except that there was a continuous monitor we attached to save the information without telling him. So when the result came, this is what was happening. So between the two meals, his blood sugar actually reached 300 something and came down. So you could get these types of information with those. And then there is a newer thing we call, it's called artificial pancreas or closed loop. This is the same thing. You have the continuous blood sugar monitor under the skin. You have the insulin pump. The only new thing is they communicate. They have a small brain there. So based on the blood sugar, the insulin can decide to make some adjustments. This is an early version. It's not perfect, but there is a lot of things happening. Before we finish, there's another thing we do more for type 1 diabetes. It's called pancreas transplant. Everybody knows kidney transplant, correct? We have heard about kidney transplant. Also heart transplant some people get. Pancreas is more rare, but for very selected patients, you can take a pancreas from a cadaver, from a donor, not from live. Kidney you can do from live because we have 2 kidneys. So if you are perfectly healthy, you might be able to donate one of them. But with pancreas, you only have one, so you can't do that. But from a cadaver, you can take a pancreas and transplant it, and they do very well. Actually, about 70 to 80% of people don't require insulin anymore long term. Yeah.
My daughter-in-law was a type 1 diabetic.
Yeah.
And her kidney was failing.
Yeah.
So she was on the transplant list. And she did receive she held out for a pancreas and a kidney from the same donor. And she, just what you said, she's no longer on insulin.
Good.
It cured her. And
Yeah.
she's doing fine.
Yeah.
It's been probably 5 or 6 years ago now.
Yeah. Great. So I think the message she's telling us is she knows someone who had both kidney and pancreas transplant, and she did well. That's actually the most common situation is whenever we have people who need kidney transplant and they happen to have type 1 diabetes, we try to give them both. It's like you pay for one and you get one for free. So the only thing is we don't have a coupon for that. So we do that, and a lot of times they do very good. So that's pancreas transplant. A couple of things about complications. At the end of the day, people have to live with diabetes for many, many years and for decades. As we continue to be better with our medications, the longer people are living with diabetes. That means over the long term, they will develop complications. They may develop eye complications. Diabetes is the #1 reason for blindness. They develop kidney disease. #1 reason for dialysis is diabetes. Foot amputations. The #1 reason for non-trauma amputation is diabetes. They develop a lot of other complications, erectile dysfunction and heart disease and you name it. So those things, so if you improve your diabetes control, the risk of complications gets less. One thing to be aware is when people take insulin, their blood sugar levels can drop too low sometimes. That's one of the things we train them with insulin and also some of the pills like glipizide, glimepiride, and so on. When the blood sugar levels drops to less than 70, they start feeling shaky, sweaty, lightheaded, dizzy, and in severe cases, they may even pass out. So we have to be aware of that, and we tell them if that happens, they have to grab sugar, sweet candy. It gets better. If it happens repeatedly, then they have to talk to their doctor, and they may need to make some adjustment on their medications. So these are, actually, we mentioned them. We also tell people they have to check their blood sugars. The majority of people who are on several insulin shots, they have to check it 4 times a day. They have to do the finger sticks. People who are on pills, they have to check 1 or 2 times a day. And they have to keep a log, or sometimes we bring the meter, we put it on a computer, and we get a printout like this, a spreadsheet, which tells us before lunch, what are the numbers like this, before breakfast, before dinner, and so on and so forth. And so I think over the last couple of decades, we have made a lot of improvement in our diabetes care. The road is still windy, but there is hope. And always remember, when diabetes, like 100 years ago, that's when insulin was discovered. Close to 100 years ago. People used to die. You have diabetes? Done. You just count your days. We started from there, and then we have all the type 2 diabetes medications, all the pills. So we are making improvement, but we just need a little more than that. I think as a country, what we have to work on is the prevention part of it. Can we do even the policy we have in the cities and has to be friendly towards people making exercise, activity, walking. Even workplaces have to be designed so that they have ability for a gym. Employers have to have things like that. We should avoid soda in schools. Why would you need soda in schools? Well, some people will tell you it's freedom of choice. Come on. They can choose when they are grown up. Give me a break, So I think it's going to need a very, concerted effort from all stakeholders so that the numbers I showed you from CDC in 2015, 1 in 3 will have diabetes. Let's prove them wrong. So thank you for your attention. So I will entertain questions.
Twice a day, but in the middle of the day,
yeah,
he was going up to 300.
Yes, I will get that. Okay.
Now,
yeah, go ahead.
If you don't have a constant monitor or an implanted monitor, should you just test more often?
No, that's not practical. That's a problem. So that's why the compromise is, the question is, if you don't have that monitor, should you check more often so that you don't have that type of situation? So the problem is that can become non-practical, So that's why the compromise is if you are on insulin, too many shots of insulin, you can check it about 4, but sometimes they check it up to 6. So that gives you kind of a better idea than, but how often are you going to check it? Every half an hour? What if, yeah?
But if this is happening to that person every day, how quickly before they start having all of these
complications?
Yes.
Good question. There are a couple of indirect ways we can tell. One is the blood test called A1C, which gives a 3 months average. So the doctor is going to see, for example, The person shows him, this is what I got in my home. It looks good. The doctor is going to see the A1C telling him something else. And the doctor is going to say, no, there is something we are not measuring. So there are some indirect ways we can evaluate that. If that happens, then we order things like this. Sometimes we do that. There is even a test. One of those CGMs, it's like I don't know if you guys know, a Holter monitor is for a heart disease. Some people who have irregular heart, they give them a monitor like this for 24 hours. We do that now with sugar. In people where we suspect something is happening at night, we give them something for 3 days. It stores all the information. They come back, we download it, and we can see what's happening. But it's very impractical to tell people to check it like a zillion times. They just get sick and tired of it. Yeah. Glycemia. Yeah. Hypoglycemia means low blood sugar. So the hypoglycemia is when it is less than 70. So when the blood sugar drops to less than 70, that's what we call hypoglycemia. And that's when people feel shaky, sweaty, lightheaded, and then if they don't act fast, they may even pass out. Hyperglycemia means high blood sugar. You know, a lot of times people with diabetes, what they are having on a day-to-day basis is the hyperglycemia. So, and that's what we are talking about. So the hyperglycemia is what it needs. That's why they are on insulin. That's why they are on the pills. So I don't know if that's exactly what your question is.
So then the hypo,
Yeah.
hyper, the one with the low,
Hypo, yeah.
that's totally different than to be treated differently.
You got it. You got it. So with hypoglycemia, don't double down. Don't give yourself the medication again to thinking, you know, this is my diabetes. No. With high blood sugars, you know, people do their insulin if they are on insulin. Sometimes they even give themselves extra insulin for high. But for low sugar, no. You actually hold the insulin, and then you get juice and sweet and candy. So that's the only time we allow you to eat candies.
I know that you
Yeah.
I know you, but do you do any alternative type medicine toward, I guess, prevention of diabetes, or even, you know, helping individuals that are already on insulin or pills? Is there any other, or do you recommend using those alternative styles of medicine?
Alternative treatment, therapy. Yeah, so her question is, do we recommend alternative therapy? I'm not exactly sure what, alternative can be interpreted, you know, differently, but we think from the scientific perspective, there's no way around it. If people want to prevent diabetes, they have to adjust their diet, be active, and do it on a day-to-day basis. They have to make it a habit. That's how you can prevent. And then the same thing, if you have diabetes, you have to do all the things we are talking about. Alternative treatment can mean a lot of things. The other day, let me just give you an example, okay? A patient I had 2 weeks ago, he was in the hospital with, he developed an infection of the foot. It started as a small acne-like, you know, thing, and he scratched it, and then he got infection, and then he came into the hospital, and his blood sugar was like 400. And I asked him, what was happening? He used to be on 2 pills. Well, he said, I decided to go to a special alternative doctor who recommends the vegetable diet with NutriBullet. You know, they advertise on TV. He said, if I eat that every day, my diabetes is going to go away. So he stopped his medications. He was eating all those vegetables from whatever. He bought the NutriBullet and was doing it for him, and his blood sugar went through 400, and he almost lost his feet. So we were able to save that. But so there's a lot of things out there. You know, sometimes they benefit from the frustration of patients. They notice people are really not happy with their diabetes, and they try to offer them an easy way out. A lot of times it doesn't work. Yeah.
How's diagnosed as a diabetic maybe, 15 years ago. And I've been on metformin for a while. But I was recently, I think, 3 months ago, the doctor said, your testosterone is so low, it's off the chart. So I'm on medication for that now, but
Yeah.
he said that testosterone in a man can affect so many things. Can it be a tie-in between testosterone and diabetes?
Yeah, good question. Number one, his question is about low testosterone and diabetes. So, number one, low testosterone is very important for adult males, okay? Sometimes there's a misconception saying, yeah, if you are old, blah, 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 maybe you don't need testosterone that much, you know? No. Testosterone is not only important for sexual function, but it's also important for energy, muscle tone, for the metabolism, and so on and so forth. So that's one thing. Second thing, low testosterone tends to happen more in people with diabetes. You know, the mechanism is not clearly understood, but a lot of times people with diabetes tend to have low testosterone. And yes, we recommend that the testosterone be replaced. And you know, things improve.
And
Yeah.
when he was diagnosed, we switched completely, did away with anything white, like we have the brown rice,
Yeah.
wheat bread. We buy that double fiber bread because we know the fiber helps
Yeah.
everything.
It's good. I think.
It's white, don't bite.
Yeah,
Yeah. So you are doing the right thing,
I'm trying.
and I'm glad you are doing that, because I call diabetes is a family disease. Both of you have to be on the same page. Otherwise, sometimes the struggle with some people, some patients I have is, one person has diabetes, but the shopping is done by the other person, and then it gets stocked, and then they tell him, well, you don't have to eat it. It's there for me. Come on. If it is in the house, somebody's gonna eat it. And so therefore, I think it's very important that families are on the same page when it comes to diet and what needs to be eaten in the house. Okay, thank you for your attention. Yeah.